has a 2021 budget. That's the main takeaway from City Council's second sitting of 2021. Council voted in the lowest tax increase of 20 years, 0.92%, thanks to a broad swath of amendments that dove into emergency funds, reserve funds, and more. But let's start at the top of tonight's meeting. And Michael Spears and Amber Beckett delivered deputations to Council.
When you have the majority of calls in the city being non-criminal and non-emergency, it's obvious that change is needed. We need to completely rethink policing in our city. Unfortunately, we're coming up short when it comes to creating this new vision.
Spears argued for a halving of the police budget, whereas Amber Beckett called for a budget reallocation. She asked why Council did not ask for smaller increases of the police and why amendments to even look at a decrease in that budget proposal were voted down. But that leads us into the budget discussion in earnest. And for anyone who has been watching, it's been one of the lengthiest budget talks in recent memory. Almost 12 hours in General Committee and tonight again. And that's in large part thanks to COVID-19. And cost cutting was the name of the game, saving people money. The aforementioned police budget was first up, and it passed with only Councillor Aylwin voting against it, that 2.65% increase. And next, Council dove into hashing out amendments and revisions to other parts of the budget. Financially, the property tax was a central point, as I mentioned before, and Council voted in nearly 25 amendments aimed at cutting the proposed 3.65% increase. That budget still contains and points to infrastructure growth, even in the year of COVID-19. Traffic calming measures, new parks and waterfront furniture, digital parking passes, transit routes, mobile apps, smart cards, and investing in new bylaw and customer service representatives were all in there, as well as some new capital projects like a new library branch for Hawley neighborhood and construction of an Allendale service hub, a new fire hall, completion of a bridge near Bryan Drive, for example. But as always, some areas of the budget inspired a little more debate. Councillors McCann and Harvey moved a discussion of a parking lot at Riverwood Park to approach the Kozlov Centre about using their parking lot. That would save a considerable amount of money currently proposed for the parking lot at Riverwood. Councillors were kind of split on this. Some really wanted to save the parkland and trees around there. Some were saying forcing residents to cross the road is just an accessibility issue. It's unsafe. The garden has not been firmed up. It hasn't been moved to that area yet, and councillors voted down the amendment to approach Kozlov Centre, meaning that if a community garden comes to the spot, a gravel parking lot is on the way too. And that it does address some accessibility concerns for users of those community gardens. Next up, the amendment to spend $500,000 on remediating soil at a city-owned property on Vespra Street, and to use a loan of $3 million to solicit proposals for modular supportive housing on that land. That motion was up last week too. However, throughout the past days, Councillors Aylwin and Councillor Thompson have done some tweaking to it, added some safeguards to make sure the council could have approval of the proposals for supportive housing on the land.
There's been added language that explicitly asks staff for additional information in advance of issuing the RFP. So that's the major difference here, is that we want to get that information before the RFP is actually issued so that we have a say in what that process can look like. And there's going to be a fulsome report back in advance of that.
And be sure to remember, nothing is approved except remediation of the land. At this point, the motion does say something will happen on the site as far as supportive housing goes, but more information and proposals will be reported to City Council before any build is approved. Councillor McCann voiced a lot of concern about this process, and he wanted assurance of more accountability to Council for the projects.
But I need to know concrete that if the information that we get back coming from Simcoe County, coming back from from staff, from the Department of Consultation of the County of Simcoe County, with our city experts, that we have a decision to say, you know what, this project's just out of our scope.
The question was answered. Can the City Council decide not to build on this Vespra Street location, even if they allot funds? And the answer to that is yes. Councillor McCann then moved another amendment to cap the cost of remediating the soil at the Vespra Street location.
The soil remediation be capped at $750,000, and staff and legal service department report on any overages to this amount to General Committee.
And that amendment to the amendment passed as well. There was one last amendment to the amendment moved by Councillor Aylwin and Natalie Harris for community meetings that would happen in the event of any proposal being accepted for the site.
That staff in the Development Services Department conduct a neighborhood meeting with the successful proponent and area residents to engage the public in the process and solicit feedback to improve the overall implementation of the project.
Meaning there'd be a lot more consultation in this process before stuff is built.
Just in the short 6 days, I've had, I think, close to 22 people reach out in a negative context. So it would be great to get more information so they can be further educated, and hopefully we can't turn the community around, at least hear them, because that is super important. So
with that, council unanimously passed both the $500,000 for remediating soil and to direct staff to start the process of starting to borrow that $3 million to be used for supportive housing projects at that location. It's clear that multiple councillors worked together on this, addressing the concerns with the proposal to make sure it could pass with unanimous approval.
Most of you were part of a solution or conveyed your concerns. Several of you worked actively on an amendment. That is exactly the way council should tackle something that they want to get done but aren't comfortable with yet.
But those are the highlights, the key conversations of tonight's budget talks. And Mayor Lehman ended council by a statement on COVID-19.
The next week, and I said this in my update today, the next week is the most critical since the beginning of the pandemic, because we now know that this more contagious variant of coronavirus is in our community. What we do in Barrie now affects what happens across Ontario and beyond.
And he says next week is really the most important in Barrie's fight against the pandemic, urging people to stay vigilant, stay home, and save lives. But be sure to check out the full recording of council, as I undoubtedly have not summed up everything in a huge amount of detail. But the main thing is that Barrie's 2021 budget is done. Thanks for watching.